Hey, Super Dads. I'm going to be talking about a segment on 60 Minutes that covered the topic of obesity, covered it very poorly, in my opinion. And the basic gist of the segment was that obesity, which is now at epidemic proportions in the United States, is in fact a disease that is genetically determined, and therefore medication is the proper way to deal with it, to address it, and that there are drugs that should be covered by insurance and should be used to treat it. Now, I'm going to get a little bit heated talking about this, so I hope you'll stick with me. I have a lot of points to make. First, this whole segment comes across as some sort of glorified infomercial, from the fact that, they start by talking about this secret Hollywood drug that elites use. It's too expensive for your average person, but they use it to drop a few pounds for their big movie roles, right? This sounds like an infomercial. Then they have these experts on, and I will get to particularly one expert. I'm not going to talk about the other one a whole lot, but she's also culpable. But these experts come on, they rent out their credibility to this program, and not even to the program. Again, we'll get to it. To corroborate this story that they're trying to tell. And then it ends with this woman crying because now her insurance covers this drug, and oh, thank goodness she's saved now that this drug has become available to her, and all of her problems are just going to go away. It's a hack job, this program, and I would expect better from a storied program like 60 Minutes. Okay, now I'm going to start with talking about this doctor, Fatima Cody Stanford, who is a very well respected, very well cited. She published about like 100 papers or something last year. If you look at her CV, and what that says to me is that she's basically just putting her name on her grad students' papers, which is common practice. I don't think it's necessarily ethical practice, but she's doing it a lot because she's got 100 papers last year, and nobody could work a full-time job. And it seems like she's working multiple full-time jobs and also publish 100 papers. No one can publish 100 papers even without a job. Okay, so I think there are three options when it comes to this lady, to this doctor. And the three options are: one, she's just a poor communicator, that she just miscommunicated, something like that. I'm not going to say that they cut what she said out of context, because I can't imagine a context where some of the things she said would be appropriate or would be truthful. So it's possible that she's a poor communicator. That I'm not convinced that that's the best option. I'm sure she lectures. She works at Harvard University, so she's a professor. She talks to patients all the time about health-related things. I mean, I'm sure that she can talk. So maybe that's not a great option. The second option is that she's ignorant when it comes to issues of physical activity and nutrition, things like that. And that might not be as crazy as it sounds. Expertise is a double-edged sword. So I am an academic. I have a history of research, and I have a PhD and a master's degree, and I'm surrounded by academics, and I know what academia is like. Here's what as you go down the path of expertise, the path becomes narrower and narrower, narrower and narrower. What you do is you study, you attempt to learn more and more about less and less, to become the world's expert on a very, very minuscule section, cross section of something about the world. And so as you learn more and more about less and less, in the end, it could be said, you come to know all about nothing. All there is to know about nothing. Now that's a bit of an exaggeration, perhaps a bit of hyperbole, but in the case of like medical doctors, for example, very few of them know more than the average person, or even like slightly more, maybe a standard deviation more than the average person about issues of physical activity and nutrition. They don't get a whole lot of training in it. And so she's a medical doctor, and she's been appointed to some government panel on healthy eating. That doesn't mean that she knows about healthy eating. and we'll get to this later, if you look at her publications and what she researched, okay, she's into pharmacology. She studied things like post-bariatric surgery pharmacological interventions and success rates. Okay, so we're talking about surgeries and we're talking about drugs, medications. Okay, that's what a lot of her papers are about, especially in her earlier career. And then in her later career, her focus has been on equity. Okay, she's got degrees in Masters of Public Health and Public Administration and things like this. She did an MBA. Okay, she's not a registered dietitian or something, right? I doubt that she's a strength and conditioning coach or something like that, right? She knows all about drugs. She knows about surgeries, I would imagine, to some extent. And she knows about issues of equity, though. Like, I don't want to get into the question of equity, but here's what an equity-minded person would bring to the table when it comes to a question like obesity. They would say, everybody should be equal. Everybody should have, the same health. And if they don't, it's not their fault. It's determined by something outside of their control, like genetics. And so what we need to do is find a way to level the outcomes. And one way to do that would be to just pour medication all over the population so that everybody can get down to, this metric that we've decided is the determinant of whether or not you are healthy or not, which is your scale weight. And okay, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but you can't just cause people to lose scale weight and think that that's the same thing as fighting obesity, because it's not. It's more complicated than that. And if you take control away from people and have them vest the control in some saving medication, they just turn more and more towards the medication. And in the long run, I guarantee, this is my guarantee, I bet my house on it, though I don't have a house. My guarantee would be that public health will get worse because of this, because of categorizing obesity as a genetic disease. Okay, so she could be ignorant about these sorts of things. She does talk about genetics and epigenetics, and look, 100% obesity is in part determined by genetics. Some people, all people are genetically programmed to seek out, rewarding calories, sweet things, right? Fruits, these sorts of things. Because if we didn't seek out sources of calorie, if our forefathers or our descendant forefathers, if our ancestors didn't seek out these sorts of foods, we wouldn't be here. Only the ones that sought those things out and ate a bunch when they got the chance were the ones who were able to procreate, and that's the way evolution works. Now, we are all genetically programmed to seek out calories and to store body fat for times when there isn't enough food, okay? So, yes, that's true. And then also epigenetically, so what that means is if your parents are fat, when you're in the womb, that's going to change the way that your genes express themselves and probably increase the chance that you're going to, be obese as a child, okay? And also the environment interacts with your epigenetics to, to turn on and turn off certain genes. So the phrase, and it's an appropriate one, is that genes load the gun, but environment pulls the trigger. And the same goes for epigenetics, right? If you take somebody from obese parents and raise them in a Zen monastery where all they're eating is, fresh vegetables and a little fish and some miso soup and that kind of stuff, right? The person is not going to follow the pattern of their parents. So the environment is an absolutely crucial element. And the habits, right? You could put someone in a terrible environment and their chances of succeeding are lower, but if you have good lifestyle habits, you can also combat that, right? Okay, so it's in part correct, which is why it's so dangerous, right? If she were just completely wrong, like if she said that, magical fairy dust is the cause of obesity, no one would take it seriously. But because genetics do play a part in it, it's easy to get blinded to the other crucial elements, the other contributing elements in there. Okay, so she says, kids who are born to obese parents have a much, much higher percentage chance of being obese. So yes, that may indicate the role of genetics. But also obese parents are probably going to create an environment that promotes obesity. They're going to have lifestyle, habits and practices that they pass on to their kids that are, that make it more likely that the child becomes obese. So all of those things can be true at the same time. And you can't just assume that correlation, my parents are fat and I'm fat, equals causation. Like, yes, it's their genetic, it's the genes that caused me to get fat. Okay, they contributed. Yes, they're a contributing factor. Fine. She then says that you should throw willpower out the window, which is also, again, partly true. Look, willpower is not a long-term solution for any sort of behavior change, right? This is pretty clear from research. And also, what is, again, it's more nuanced than that. What's also true is that willpower can and often is a crucial ingredient in behavior change, because in order to change a habit, you need to exert willpower, right? So let's say I want to change the habit that I have of snacking on junk food while I watch TV. Now, because I have developed a neural pathway, I've developed the habit to a neurological level of snack food goes with TV. Snack food goes with TV, and I've made this association deeply. The first time that I, want to watch TV without eating junk food may require some willpower, especially if there's junk food in the house. Now, the best thing to do would be to get the junk food out of the house. But again, that's going to require a little bit of willpower because you're probably in the habit of keeping it in the house. So to get started, your initial momentum does tend to require the exertion of some willpower. And that's totally fine. But the key is to not think that willpower is going to keep you going in the long term. What you need to do, the people who succeed are the people who create habits, who craft their environment to make the desired behavior easier. They remove hurdles to clear the path so that the desired behavior can build up momentum. And these are all intentional design choices, right? But willpower can and often does get you started down that path. And we also know that willpower gets stronger the more you use it. So if you just say, well, I'm never going to use willpower for anything, right? It's basically like saying, I'm never going to use my biceps for anything. What do you think is going to happen to your biceps? I'm never going to lift my arms over my head, right? Because I can't lift my house. Well, sure, but you can lift, your luggage to put it in an overhead carrier. So use the appropriate muscle when it's appropriate, considering the load you're trying to lift. Now, you can lift your overhead luggage over your head and put it in the bin, using your shoulder muscles, for example. You can stop yourself from eating junk food this one time. Could you hold your overhead luggage over your head indefinitely using your shoulder muscles? No. Could you stop yourself from eating junk food indefinitely using your willpower? No. But that's just not an appropriate use for either one of them. So it's just disingenuous to say that you got to throw willpower entirely out the window. Out the window means it has zero role to play, and that is just bollocks. I don't actually say that word very often, bollocks. I mean, I'm American. I don't know why that came out right there. Okay, she also talks about metabolic set points. Now, metabolic set points is not an established theory, which, people think theory means it's an idea that has yet to be tested, but scientifically, a theory is something that has been well established. It's not an established theory, okay? It's still in the sort of hypothesis-y phase right now, where there are a lot of questions about a lot of things that it doesn't seem to explain, a lot of tests that still need to be run. And her statement that people have a metabolic set point and it's in the brain and it's determined by the brain, and therefore obesity is a mental disease, right? It's just such an oversimplification, right? Does your metabolic set point, to the extent that it exists, is it influenced by your brain? Absolutely. It totally is. Because things like, your thyroid and your hypothalamus, and you have all these different, parts of your body that contribute. But you know what else contributes? Like your gut. Your gut microbiome contributes a tremendous amount to your metabolic set point. Okay, I'm not going to do the quotes anymore. Just you get the idea. It's not that simple. Okay, so gut microbiome, your body composition, right? So if you have, less flesh overall, less matter, your metabolism is going to be slower. You add fat, it raises your metabolism actually, because fat burns calories. Okay, you add a bunch of muscle, well, that's going to raise your metabolism even more. So how do you explain there's some sort of metabolic set point when people can change their body composition and change their metabolism, and they do it all the freaking time? Okay, and if there's a metabolic set point, then how is it that people are getting fat, right? You have to go from being where you are and gaining weight, right? So how is it that someone can gain 20 pounds in a couple months, or like 30 pounds over the course of a year, or 200 pounds over the course of their life, right? If that could happen, if people can get fat like that, then there can't be a metabolic set point, right? So it's got to be more flexible than that. Now, where this idea does have some credence is the idea that we have a sort of window, a metabolic window that our body likes to stay in. And it's a sort of homeostatic balance, right? A dynamic balance. So sometimes your weight fluctuates up and sometimes it fluctuates down, and there might be a window of about 10 to 15 pounds. And it's kind of hard to break out of that window. Well, that's one of the reasons why when someone goes on a diet to lose weight, you can't reduce their calories by like 15 calories and expect them to lose very much weight, because their body is going to find a way to stay in homeostasis. It'll just reduce their physical activity by that many number of calories, or it'll get them to eat a little bit less elsewhere or something like that, right? And so it's just so poorly communicated. I'm really frustrated, as you can probably tell. Okay. Another problem with that idea, right, is the idea that your brain knows how many calories you're eating. Your brain doesn't keep track of calories. So protein is a satiating food, more satiating than carbohydrates are, right? So if you eat more protein, right, you're going to feel fuller for longer than if you eat the same number of calories of carbohydrates. So then again, how is there a metabolic set point that just tells you how many calories you're supposed to eat? What about calorie-rich drinks like sodas and stuff like that, right? If people are guzzling down, the average American drinks something like 145 calories of drinks on average every day, right? Now, if that's the case, right, then they should be eating 145 calories less of food elsewhere. But we know that's not the case, because sugary drinks are implicated very directly in weight gain. In weight gain. So it's just like your brain doesn't know this is this many calories. It gets signals from your stomach that tell it, oh, this is how full I am. It gets signals from your muscles that tell it this is how much glucose, glucagon we have in storage. This is, we need some more. We have enough, or right. All of these things signal to your brain, and your brain is going to tell you. And there's also the idea that habits, right? If someone's in the habit of eating, again, junk food when they watch TV, then even if their stomach is full at the time and they've had their metabolic set point number of calories for the day, and they sit down and watch TV, they're just in the habit of eating junk food. They're probably going to eat junk food because of the neural pathways and how deeply ingrained they are. Look, it's just so you can change your metabolic set point, right? If you reduce your calories by like 10% to 20% to 30% over a long enough period of time, you're going to lose fat, and that's going to change your metabolism. Now, your body is going to want to go back up because it thinks it doesn't have enough food, but that's not the same thing as saying that your body needs to stay at a certain amount of weight, right? What happens when you diet down is your metabolism slows down as your body mass decreases, right? And so, like, if you add more food back in, right, it's gonna cause more of weight gain than it did when you were at a higher metabolic rate. Okay, so there's just all sorts of problems with this metabolic set point theory, and to claim it's just some sort of settled, very simple thing is just nonsense. All right, now let's get on to physical activity and diet. Now, her response to the question of whether getting more physical activity and going on a diet wouldn't that cause you to lose weight, she gives this totally dismissive response about, well, look at people on the show The Biggest Loser, where they cut their calories and they do all this exercise and they lose weight, and then what happens? They go right back up. That is such a red herring. It's just such a logical error to think that people. No, it is a logical error, and to think that that's going to fool people is, well, to try to fool people that way is just unethical. And to think it's going to fool many people is kind of ludicrous. Yes, the shows The Biggest Loser are about losing as much weight as possible in an unsustainable manner as quickly as possible. So of course people are going to rebound from that. Plus, the kind of exercise that they're doing is often the kind that's going to slow down their metabolism more and thus set them up for a rebound afterwards, right? But that's it's just nonsense to say that you can't increase your physical activity, engage in weight training to change your body composition, eat the right amount of calories to slowly bring your weight down, and that it's not possible to stay there. There is an entire registry of people, and I will talk about this again at the end, a registry of people who have lost significant amounts of weight and kept it off. And so the idea that, and you know how they do it? Hey, freaking big surprise. They do it by reducing their calories and increasing their physical activity in a sustainable way. Okay, and even this drug, and we're going to talk more about the drug, even this drug that reduces this is how it works. It increases your levels of satiety from the same amount of carbohydrates, which in turn results in you eating less food. Now, that's one of its primary mechanisms. Now, if eating less food didn't cause you to lose weight, then how the hell is this drug causing you to lose weight? It's just ridiculous. And she says she has clients who come in and they can't lose weight even though they're exercising 5 to 6 times a week, and they're eating healthy and stuff like that. I would question whether she actually knows what kind of exercise they're doing, what kind of things they're eating, and whether she herself knows what kind of exercise they should be doing or what they should be eating. Because someone telling you they're eating healthy and getting enough exercise, whether or not their statement reflects accurately the objective truth of the situation is predicated on their understanding of what healthy eating and physical exercise, physical activity consist of. And most people haven't the foggiest clue of what those things are. Okay, now, messaging. This lady has a master's degree in public health and public administration, not to mention in business administration, which means she's taking classes in leadership and communication. She should know how irresponsible it is to go on primetime television and tell the most overweight and obese population in the history of the world that there's nothing they can do about their obesity and their being overweight. That it's all just their genetics and it's totally out of their hands. That is so irresponsible. It blows my mind, okay? There is a very well documented, very well researched effect. It's called the Pygmalion effect. Look up anything about organizational development, psychology, education, leadership. All of these different fields have corroborated on this being true. They've all agreed, okay? The Pygmalion effect is when you have low expectations for someone and your low expectations become a hurdle to their success. Okay, so if I say, all right, you got a test today. It's too bad you're really dumb and you're probably not going to do well on it. That person is going to do less well on that test than they would have otherwise. Another way to say this is the bigotry of low expectations. And this is a real effect, a real psychological effect. And so if you tell people there is nothing they can do about their current situation, you can expect that they will do less than they would have otherwise, which means less motivation, less getting out and being physically active, less eating healthy, less taking care of themselves in general. Here's what I would ask you. If it were your child who was struggling with being overweight, what would you tell them? And I would ask the same question to Dr. Stanford. I don't know whether you have children, but if you did, what do you message them? What would you message them if they were overweight? I doubt they are, because you're thin, and so they must be thin because of your genetics. Would you tell them, hey kid, I love you, but you are totally out of luck. It's just your genes. There's nothing you can do about it except take this medicine. Or would you say, look, you may have to work harder than some other people. You may have challenges that are unique to you, but you can do it if you put your mind to it. You're capable, and I believe in you. I believe in you is one of the strongest messages you can give to a person to help them succeed. I believe in you. And she just told the entire American population that there's no reason to believe in them. Which brings me to the third possibility. I said she's probably not a poor communicator. She may just be ignorant. Best possibility, she's a shill for Big Pharma. Okay? Here's my evidence. Because that's a pretty big accusation to make against a Harvard professor. The drug that they're hawking on this program is called GLP-1. That's a generic name for it. GLP-1. Now they're talking about Wegovy, and they only really mention Novo Nordisk's version of this, which is called Wegovy. But there is another version of it called Ozempic that came out 6 years ago. Now they talk about this breakthrough drug, Wegovy, that helps people lose their weight. But this is not a breakthrough drug. It's been out in the market for 5 or 6 years now under another name. Oh, what a coincidence that Novo Nordisk is a sponsor of this segment. Wonder how that connects. Okay, so GLP-1, as I said, it works on satiety. It also works on how insulin works in your body. Guess what? Somebody who I trust with my life is a diabetes specialist. A doctor in Japan, diabetes specialist, very knowledgeable about these because this drug has been in circulation, is covered by insurance in Japan because we have more or less universal health care here. And, it's been used here for a long time. So it's not this new breakthrough thing. This doctor told me the GLP-1 doesn't actually really help that much with weight loss. People lose a little bit of weight, sure, right? But it's not really anything remarkable. What she said was, it's typically prescribed alongside another drug, which is called SGLT1. And this combination is prescribed to people who have type 2 diabetes. Then they work really well together. Now, SGLT1, the other one, the one that they didn't talk at all about in this program, helps people lose weight very quickly. Because what it does is basically gets them to piss out glucose. Okay, it just like their body doesn't store all the glucose and so you're just pissing out calories. Okay, and it causes really fast weight loss. So you might be thinking, but wait a second, why would they make a whole segment about a less effective weight loss drug that isn't even a breakthrough drug? It's been around for years. Good question, fair listeners. SGLT1 has been around for almost 10 years, like 9 years or something like that, right? SGLT1 is available in generic forms. In the United States, the branded forms of SGLT1 are still undergoing FDA, they're still pending FDA approval. So there's basically no big pharmaceutical company that has its own brand of the more effective weight loss drug. What they do have is a new name for an old drug that works a little bit on weight loss. Yet that's the one that they're focused on. It is so transparent when you know the backstory. But wait, this Dr. Fatima Cody Stanford, in 2021 received close to $30,000 in consulting fees from Novo Nordisk. Now, when is the last time that you or anyone you know received basically a year's full-time wage for many Americans to provide consulting on a drug that's been around for 6 years and hasn't changed at all, except that they changed the name? What is she consulting about? The name change? Did she come up with the name Wegovy? Because I had to say, I wouldn't have paid $30,000 for that name. That's 1 year. We don't even know what she got in 2022. We don't even know. Oh, and she got assigned to a federal panel on improving eating habits among Americans, despite the fact that she doesn't think that nutrition or diet is a major factor in obesity and overweightness. Okay, she got paid all this money, and she got approval. She got her position on a federal panel greenlit by a big drug company, or they put her forward, even more likely, because that's how politics in the United States works. It's all, give and take. It's all horse trading. It's all backroom corrupt little deals like that. So this infomercial was full of nonsense, delivered a terrible message, and did so just dishonestly. If you wanted to focus on obesity and what can be done about this huge epidemic that is literally threatening, the continued prosperity of the most powerful nation on the planet, they could have talked about what I said before, the National Weight Control Registry, which has thousands and thousands of case studies of people who have lost significant amounts of weight and kept it off for a long period of time. So tell people what they can do. How about that? Because there are a lot of things that they can do. You know what another thing they could have focused on was? How inequality, wealth and socioeconomic inequality plays a role in creating this epidemic. Because I'll tell you what, socioeconomic inequality is 1,000% a bigger contributor than genetic inequality is, right? If you plot out obesity in an urban area, let's say you take, New York, and you take a very wealthy area of New York and compare it with a very poor area of New York and look at the obesity rates, it's night and day. Look at the life expectancy. It's night and day. Okay? People not having access to healthy foods, not having access to education, not having access to outdoor spaces where they can engage in healthy physical activity. Like, these are the things that would be difference makers, that would help us to be healthier long term, rather than just helping us be more drugged up long term, be more dependent long term. It's despicable. But of course, you don't want to talk about inequality on a TV program that's funded by Big Pharma and features, the elite. If you want to add, so what's the final play here? The play here is Novo Nordisk and other big pharmaceutical companies getting their weight loss medications approved for inclusion in healthcare, health insurance plans, so that they can just start raking in the taxpayer dollars, raking them in. Okay, it would be like nothing, a bonanza like none ever seen, for big pharma. And so that's the point of this, right? It's a disease now. It's a problem in your brain. There's nothing you can do, but we have a drug for it. If only your insurance company, if only the government were really knew the truth, they would give it to you. But they're the bad people here. We just want to help. Get out of here with that. You kidding me? It's so transparent. So how about, instead of paying for $1,000 a month medication for every overweight person in the United States, how about you take the same amount of money and invest that in dealing with wealth inequality, in providing public spaces and healthy food and education and opportunities for people, that would help them turn their lives around. Just an idea. Thanks for watching this long.